Welcome to Get YouTube Done Now podcast series. Excited to be here. I am MAJESTY-ALL-MIGHTY, Wow, and I am the founder and creator of the YouTube-preneur Factor Evolution. And I am, as always, joined by my star Empress Celebrity-preneur, Gina Gardiner. And we're excited to be doing this series. And this is just a short segment that we're going to do today. And it's actually product inspired because we want to be able to share with you some value and also give you just an insight, I guess, into some of the products that we have around this, particular topic that we're going to be talking about today. Typically, when we do these segments, we just allow the space to be open, and then we allow core themes to come up, and then we share from there. But we wanted to be intentional about doing a product-inspired segment. So, Gina, as always, thank you so much for co-hosting and being here.
Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I absolutely am looking forward to this as well. So, want to be more topical today in terms of being able to direct people to a core focus that we know that most definitely have had some struggles and challenges with. So, in terms of with getting YouTube done, we talk a lot about, as you know, the action-oriented initiatives in terms of things that they need to do to build their channel. But the revenue factor is very important, right?
It is indeed, yes.
Yeah. And so people have to be very intentional about building wisely as it relates to the revenue aspect. And so you and I, we've done countless products, and trainings around this particular area. And so I wanted to focus on a few of those as it relates, to the revenue. So there are two primary products that we can talk around, today. And one is roadblocks into revenue recognition with YouTube. And so we'll talk about that because a lot of times people run into roadblocks. And then we'll also talk about figures to followers, which is another product that we've done that's in a masterclass format. But before we get started in terms of just going through some of what those products cover, so let's talk a little bit about the roadblock aspects, and then we'll talk about the prioritization in terms of focusing on building the monetization aspect rather than just the audience a certain way. So so do you want to get started with just having some conversation quickly about that before we jump in?
I think that sounds good. Yes.
Okay. Well, certainly people do face challenges. YouTubers, or what I call YouTube-preneurs, because if you're in business, you have to have the entrepreneurial focus with this, because that puts on a completely different, I guess it brings a different framework and level to what you're doing versus that I'm just a YouTuber and I'm trying to build an audience and popularity and hoping that it will lead to profitability, which you and I, we have a product around there. We're going to talk about that. But people do face roadblocks, for sure. And so often the roadblocks that they face are primarily what I found, Gina, is with the visibility factor, and not just visibility of not necessarily being seen, but being rightly seen by, the right audience, so to speak. People have views, but not necessarily being viewed by their ideal audience. So we'll talk a little bit about, that because our product talks about that. So, yeah, you don't know anything about that. None of us really know anything about that, right?
I think every single person who's trying to sell something, particularly over the internet, has faced the challenge of how do you get to the right people at the right time, selling the right product in the right way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that definitely has been a challenge. But I also find that it actually is sometimes when you have had that that to happen, it actually is to your higher advantage because it causes more expansion. So one of the products that we have that's called Roadblocks into Revenue Recognition with YouTube is how to lucratively leverage a lack of visibility to your audience as your affluent alignment to success. So it's basically learning how to use whatever is in the way and look at it as that is the way, and then start shifting into a more profitable perspective. So we know that when people start to grow on YouTube or any other social media platform, what can tend to happen is where there's an influx of, let's say, interest. People start to really build out from there based on that audience, which is just a core audience that's has their attention on them at this time. What I find is that once that starts to happen and that trajectory fills in that way, people get stuck in their channels just being primarily about that focus, even though there's a lot of different audiences that would love to be a part of their experience from a more diverse way. So what happens, Gina, is that when people start facing the roadblocks in terms of there's not the visibility, often that means there's not the diversity there that needs to be there. Your thoughts around that?
I think so often people have a particular blueprint in their head of how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And often that's a blueprint that other people have shared with them.
Right.
It's
Right.
got to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
I also think a lot of people get caught up in the numbers and
Right.
think what I need is large numbers, and they actually are fairly meaningless. If you have got
Exactly.
a small group of
Mm-hmm.
people who really like what you do and who are ready to purchase, then very often that's more meaningful and more lucrative than if
Right.
you've got thousands of followers or subscribers who just sit there and don't actually actively involved, or certainly don't want to pay for anything because they're just a voyeur, really, in terms of, well, what's going on, we'll have a look, but we're not
Mm-hmm.
really engaging.
Right. And sometimes the reason why that can be an issue, so to speak, is that YouTubers, so to speak, or people actually aren't showing up as entrepreneurs to allow the audience to know the type of experience they should be having on this channel. That's why my primary channel is a marketplace channel, because people understand that it is a marketplace. And so, yes, there are a variety of things that are happening on that channel, but a marketplace symbolizes that this is a place that you can come and shop. You can have an experience for sure, but it is definitely an experience where you come and there's the variety. And yes, that is on other channels, for sure. But sometimes when there's not the vibrational intention around that, it can definitely be a mismatch. People don't know how to be with the channel. So let me go back to talking a little bit about the roadblocks, and then we're going to touch on what you talked about in terms of people focusing on the followers, and that will kind of segue into the other product that we have, around this. So I'm just going to go over kind of the outline or the core objective for the product Roadblocks into Revenue Recognition with YouTube. So the core objective is that the primary goal is to help low visibility brands get repositioned and redirected for revenue with YouTube, making the shift from low-end to high-end visibility in order to be rightly seen by their high-end audience. This training is also designed to create expanded awareness for next-level comprehension, for accurately carving out one's own affluent lane or profits path for more tremendous success with their channel, learning the art of lucratively leveraging low visibility as the gateway to higher visibility in a new way under the radar. And as a result, they become visible and rightly seen where it counts. Often this will happen by taking a nonlinear route to achieve uncommon results. Low or lack of visibility isn't what's in the way of brands and entrepreneurs being seen. It is the way to achieving far more than you can imagine. So the core coverage for this product is discover your affluent alignment for YouTube success. Whatever is in the way is the way, shifting into a more profitable perspective and receiving YouTube revenue recognition in the forms of praise that pays, feedback that feeds back, and more. Also leveling up for pioneerpreneurial profitability with YouTube, and then from ashes to affluence, rising to new revenue heights as an illuminate, profitable pioneer phoenix, and there's a 90-day aligned action plan. So the reason why I thought it was important to share this and what this particular product covers is a mini conversational training that both Gina and I facilitated, is we have to look at what are the aspects of your branding or what you're trying to display on your channel that you actually don't have in place. So if you actually aren't showing up as a brand, in a sense, that within itself can be a roadblock. Is right, Gina?
Absolutely. You have to be not only trusted, but recognized as who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So branding is key. And sometimes when people are just starting out, they don't have that all sort of defined. And actually that's okay, because branding is definitely an evolutionary process. But what can happen is that you have different aspects and elements of your brand that are building as you are building your channel. And so this is why it's not always the best thing to even focus and niche down, so to speak, because like I said, if that grid starts filling in, that trajectory of your channel starts to fill in, then you start building out an audience around that and people gravitate to that. But what happens is then you can get very stuck in that, and you're ready to move to another level and you can't, because you're locked into that framework. But if you don't actually have buyers coming to your channel kind of initially, you're going to be stuck anyway. So this is the thing about taking what you do and now looking at how can I take all what seem to be the problems and challenges and make this into a more affluent type of experience. Well, I talked about being a multi-interest channel, a marketplace-based channel. So if you want people to do business with you or want them to invest in your channel in some way other than just being viewers, then you're going to have to position yourself to show up in that way. You agree, Gina?
Well, if you don't show people in that way, how are they going to know? The only way they can see what you do, what you're offering, how you can help them, is if you are very clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just putting up a load of nice videos isn't going to do it, is it? It's got to be focused. It's got to be intentional.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it does. It has to be intentional. And also, too, there is momentum that has to be built around that as well, because you can't just be a channel that's selling. And then also, too, when you first get started in building the momentum, it doesn't mean that people are going to come and just buy right away, because that's a momentum has to be built around even the trustability around that, people getting to know the channel. But because you are showing up and you are kind of creating that vibration, then what will happen is that you will actually start to attract people who are ready to buy and not just viewers. It all works together like a hand in glove, because you do need people who are coming to your channel. And even if they are they're just viewers, they are contributing to your channel in terms of watch time, right? And you need that, because believe it or not, sometimes your buyers are coming to the channel and they're just, hey, I'm ready to buy. And they see, whether it's a YouTube short or they see one video that they like, and then they subscribe mainly to whatever list you have, and maybe not even to your channel. So they're buying from you, but they may not actually be contributing to the channel's growth in a way in terms of what counts with YouTube. in terms of watch time and you know, that aspect that keeps your channel kind of, I guess, being more visible to a larger audience. So your thoughts around that, Gina?
Well, with all of these things, that ultimately you want to be seen, and how you turn up, how consistent you are. We've talked about that on other podcasts, haven't we? The need to be consistent,
Yes.
but not consistent in that you're doing the same old thing all the time. People
Right.
need to see you in the broadest context, and that's the doorway in to other things.
Yes.
But ultimately, I'm assuming if you're going to know unless you show up. And if they're going to trust you, if you're just selling all the time, they're going to have fatigue very quickly for that. So it's got to be something which is much more holistic about you and your business and your life. And in doing that, then you start to demonstrate the authentic you. And people are going to engage with you. And there's so much white noise out there. People want to work with or buy from people that they trust, people that they recognize as being someone who's not a fly-by-night and there 1 minute and gone the next, somebody who is a real person with a real life, who's rounded, who has a lot to offer. And when they then do trust you, then they'll spend their money with you.
Absolutely.
But without trust, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that is the absolute truth for sure. And so you have to have that. So before we get ready to wrap up, another product that I want to highlight that I brought up was figures to followers. And kind of the sub theme of this is prioritizing purposeful profits over popularity on YouTube to create the win-win for you, your audience, and more. And it's a masterclass. And so the core objective around this is that their core themes that were explored, and it was preparing for the lucrative long game versus the overnight 15 minutes of fame short game, also creating the win-win to set up the divine right value exchange experience, and focus on designing a meaningful and purposeful profits model, and also residual revenue recognition with consistent praise that pays and feedback that feeds back, which was also talked about in the other product that I mentioned. And then, this is an entry-level segment, and it really is part of a signature social media focused master course and mastermind program. But this is just more of an introductory of focusing on a core area, and YouTube just happens to be, the area. So Gina, you brought up earlier, just in terms of people focusing on followers and that not being, very meaningful to the business aspect of why people are showing up on YouTube. And it is primarily because there's been the teachings around, kind of build popularity. And even though that seems to make sense, if you think about it, it's like, well, you do want to be seen as an influencer and as an authority and someone who's built up an audience. And that kind of shows that there is people who are tuning in and trusting this brand, so to speak. But what I know to be true is that they're not always buyers, right? But if you're in business, that's the difference between a YouTuber and a YouTube-preneur. You have to set your structures up to be where you are in business so that there is something that is sustainable. So you do have to prepare for the long game, but within that are the short, mid, the short-term wins and the mid wins or however. But you don't just want to be someone who popped up overnight and you gained a lot of followers, and then next thing you know, you're a content creator constantly producing for people who just came to just see and be inspired and all these different things, and yet there's nothing in it for you in terms of having the praise that pays or the feedback that feeds back. So, your thoughts before we wrap up this segment?
Just to say, if you're in business, then think about not just the videos, but what you're going to use them for. How are you going to use the descriptions, the hashtags? making all of those work for you and having a consistent message that supports your brand and lets people know how you can make a difference in their life, a positive one, is going to make the difference to whether your business actually is lucrative or not. And YouTube is an incredible tool, but like all of them, you have to use it wisely. And so that means getting underneath the sort of surface of it, and allowing it to help you help other people by demonstrating what you have to offer. And it's an incredibly powerful tool. So I'd really urge you, go and have a look at our sites. That's a really good place to start. And have a look at the different things that we're doing. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a work in progress. And in doing so, you can actually set something up yourself. And we'd love to hear from you and find out how you're doing, and if there are other things that we can help you with.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you, of course. Gina, you're always so great. And, it's important before we conclude here is, and the reason why we wanted to do, product inspired, types of segments is, again, allowing people to understand that the help is there for them. And yes, even though in other segments we do direct people to the description and everything, but being able to be intentional about sharing, what you actually can partake in to help you. And yes, the details are in the description, for this, as Gina mentioned, and also checking out, our channels and just other things that we do and other products that we have. But yeah, wanting you to understand some of what goes on within your different, frameworks as it relates to YouTube, where you may be running into a problem, but how you can actually sort of pivot and actually use that to your advantage. But you actually, in order to know that, have to have tools, have to have methods. Even when it comes to figuring out your own way around it, sometimes you need promptings. We do a lot of journal prompt type of exercises that bring out people's own information, but you have to have something that actually stimulates that. So that's why we're here to, provide support and be able to at least give you a jump start so you can get YouTube done and get YouTube done now, especially in these critical areas as it relates to business building and revenue building. So Gina, I'm going to turn it over to you to close us out, and any empowering words that you would like to leave us with today.
YouTube has to be something that you consider. And if you're going to consider it, then you might as well do it well. And so, going to look at the products that are there to help you, listening to the podcast, actually unpicking how you can approach it as you get started, rather than going a long way down the road and then realizing it's not working for you, I think is a really sensible thing to do. So I would say to you, go and have a look, go and give it a try. There's lots of products and things there to help you shortcut your route to success. So it's time to get going, and we're here to help you. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.